The end of the season press conference, we seen the Chicago Bulls and Arturas Karnisovas pretty much let us know what his plan was, and that's for the Chicago Bulls to remain competitive, and he wanted to speed up the timeline for us to be back in contention. So on today's episode, I have a question for you all. Would trading for a young star derail the rebuilding plans for the Chicago Bulls? A lot of things to talk about, but y'all already know you gotta hear the music first.
Cognac, gang.
Shy Bulls podcast with the Cognac Boys. I'm Cognac Boy Bobby, and I'm holding it down on today's daily episode. If you tuned in with me today, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell as well. Now, the question for today is, will trading for a young star derail the Chicago Bulls rebuilding plan? It was just dropped the other day, yesterday to be exact, that KC Johnson came out and said that the Chicago Bulls are standing firm on what we already know. They ain't tanking. They are not tanking. AK Arturas Karnisova already let us know he's trying to build this team out and speed up the timeline. Even when he was pressed by reporters from Chicago media, they pretty much was asking him like, hey, why don't you feel it's necessary to go ahead and tank, grab a couple additional top draft picks, and then push forward that way? That is something that the Chicago Bulls are not interested in. So we got to try to just figure it out. And quite frank with you, just deal with it. At this point, we just got to deal with the Chicago Bulls being the Chicago Bulls and doing their business the way that the Chicago Bulls want to do their business. Now, if we go back and we look at the exit interview that Arturas Karnisova had, Mr. AK, he pretty much said he cannot define a timeline for this team, but he is looking for ways to improve and come back with a little bit more higher expectations than what the Chicago Bulls had this previous season. Now, look, I know it's going to be some people that's like, man, that sounds absolutely ridiculous, and I'm 100% with you. It's crazy that you don't have a timeline on how you're trying to do business, but it is what it is because we don't make the decisions. That's just what it really is. But when we talk about trading for a young star and will that derail the rebuild plans, I think it's right on par with what the Chicago Bulls are actually trying to do. If I'm keeping it real with you, the Chicago Bulls have a plan of acquiring young talent with experience and trying to push the team forward in that way. I am not one of the guys that believe tanking is the end-all be-all for a specific team, but I do think that a plan is necessary for you to have a team that can finally be in playoff contention. Not play in contention, playoff contention. And we say that with hella emphasis for the Chicago Bulls. And it's already been known that AK is not looking for a bunch of young guys to come up in here and take over the Chicago Bulls and be able to go out there and then you waiting for 2-3 years down the road. He's trying to speed up this process. Whether some people like that or not, we just got to see what happens with it. But I'm asking this question simply because there's already rumors circling around Zion Williamson. You hearing different things about Trae Young. I'm pretty sure that we're going to start hearing things about Ja Morant and Triple J over there from Memphis. You're going to hear things about Larry Markkinen. There's going to be a lot of rumors that are going to be circulating around, and you already know that one team that's going to be mentioned with potential trade destination is going to be the Chicago Bulls. Now, if we are trying to build a way to a degree, will this necessarily derail the plans of the Chicago Bulls? I say no, because this is their plan anyway. They already let us know what they're trying to do, and that is build a team out that has young players with experience. Hence why when you traded for Zach LaVine, you got a bunch of young players, and you ain't get much out of that other than the rights of your pick back. So that already lets us know what the mindset is of the Chicago Bulls and what they've done. But prior to that, you traded DeMar DeRozan. I think you just got like a couple second-round picks, and that was about it. Then you traded Alex Caruso straight up for a younger player with the experience in Josh Giddey. So the history is already there for us to see that the Chicago Bulls are not interested in tanking whatsoever. They want young players with experience. So if you do go out there and you do find out that you can negotiate something decently with a team that might fit what AK is trying to do, you're going to expect that it ain't going to be much draft capital coming back for the Chicago Bulls, at least in my opinion. The plan is already set. The plan for the Chicago Bulls is already set. And this is how they're going to move. And we either got to move on to another team or just sit firm and deal with it. And I ain't going to lie to you. I ain't moving on to another team. That's not the way that I move. But I will say, if the Bulls continue to do this, I'll just keep doing what I do. Showing up right here, killing them, talking crazy about them, castigating them, criticizing them, and pretty much saying, hey, y'all got to do something better because enough is enough of this play in. We in for the play in. We got to get that out of our minds, man. But the goal for the Chicago Bulls is for a faster turnaround. A faster turnaround, if we keeping it real, which I don't necessarily think is going to happen simply because I don't think the Chicago Bulls will be willing to give up certain things. But I think that a faster turnaround, like going after Zion Williamson, that will push your timeline a little bit forward because now you have to operate in a different way. And if you're looking at examples of pushing it forward with a little bit of, you know what I'm saying, not necessarily taking that back seat, you look at examples of, hey, we traded for Nikola Vucevic near that end of that season. Boom, he comes in that offseason. We go get Alex Caruso, DeMar DeRozan, and Lonzo Ball. That pushes that timeline forward for Arturas Karnisovas. And that's pretty much what I'm expecting to happen this offseason. I'm expecting AK to go out there and try to find a young star to see what they could potentially bring onto the team. And if the Pelicans are really, really sure that they are going to shop Zion Williamson, I believe the Chicago Bulls will get in that business. I believe if the New Orleans Pelicans are shopping Zion Williamson, the Bulls will be interested, and I think they will be willing to depart with some of their main parts on this team so they can push their timeline forward. Because if we're keeping it real, going to acquire a Zion Williamson does push you up a little bit further up in your timeline. Doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be in contention for a championship, but the expectations, if you get a Zion Williamson and you're somehow able to maintain and keep Montes Buzelis, Josh Giddey, and Kobe White, playoffs is going to be the expectations. And for Arturas Karnisovas, that's going to be what he wants. He's going to be entertained and he's going to be feeling like the man, especially if the Chicago Bulls find themselves in the playoffs. If they find themselves in the playoffs, Arturas Karnisovas is going to be cheering with pom-poms. But as of right now, we still stuck in mediocrity. That's just what it really is. Because if you go out there and you look at all these different type of prospects and you look at some of these guys that may not necessarily be happy, hey, you might be able to find yourself acquiring somebody. And I think that he'll be willing to give up some of that draft capital that we've looked at and we said, hey, we need more young talent on the team. I think that AK is pretty much good with Montes Buzelis and his development and his turnaround. And then you have Josh Giddey and his, steps forward, and you believe and you heard what he said about Kobe White on how he continuously improved. I think that he'll be good with that, especially if you can move off P. Will and Nikola Vucevic and somehow, some way, just give up a couple draft picks in the first round. AK is going to be cheering with the pom-poms. AK is going to be cheering with the pom-poms if he's some way, somehow able to pull off a trade for Zion Williamson. He's able to retain Josh Giddey, Kobe White, and Montes Buzelis, and you acquire Zion Williamson, that man going to be happy as ever. I don't necessarily know what that type of team will look like, but it absolutely will be much better. Now, I'm going to keep it a buck with that. I don't necessarily know how far they can go, but AK going to be jumping up and down with the pom-pom zone because I still have my concerns about Zion Williamson and his focus to the NBA game. I still have my concerns about his injury history. I still have my concerns about how do you fill out the rest of the roster to ensure that you are able to have guys play decent amount of minutes, but then when the reserve guys come in, you are able still to be able to compete at a high level to where you're not sitting here scrapping for 9th and 10th in the Eastern Standard. It's like, bro, it has to be much better. So I don't necessarily think that those type of plans would derail the Chicago rebuild plan, simply because they ain't really want to go into a rebuild. They want to be in the middle and some way, somehow find them ways creeping up into playoff contention and hopefully championship contention. I think that's the way that they want to move. They don't want to go out there and get a bunch of draft picks. And I think strongly that Arturas Karnisovas will be willing to part ways with a couple more first round draft picks coming up if they can somehow, some way cash in on a Zion Williamson. I don't necessarily know if Trae Young would be an option. I would decline that. I wouldn't even consider that. I don't know if Ja Morant is going to be interested in moving from Memphis, or Jaren Jackson Jr. Those are just speculations. I'll keep it real with that. But it will be interesting to see what happens after they get swept by OKC, because the Memphis Grizzlies, oh my God, just forget about it. Just forget about it. I feel like it should be OKC in 3. And why you say, Bobby, it's they gotta win 4 games. Now, the first game getting blowed out by 51, that should count as 2 games for the Oklahoma City Thunder. It's a bit ridiculous, don't get me wrong, but 51-point beat down, yeah, that should count as 2 games, bro. Because they just lost by 20, I think, yesterday. They just lost. They just got blown out again yesterday. Now they are going back to Memphis, but man, no shot. No shot. No shot. Is it like maybe 1 out of respect, but no shot. No shot. No, I don't see it. I don't see it. And if you look at the season series between the 2 teams, they've been waxing them boys. But hey, back to the, you know what I'm saying? But I think that if we just keeping it real and calling it what it is, the Chicago Bulls are firmly set with just going ahead and trying to stay in the middle and some way, somehow find them ways up to creep into, playoff contention. We don't necessarily have to agree with it, because it ain't going to change anything, because AK already put it out there that the Reinsdorf, they support him firmly. Billy Donovan is his coach for the future. And that's just what we stuck with. I will give credit for Billy Donovan for operating the way that he operated for most of the season. I still have my issues with him, but the young players are responsive to him. If we keeping it real, not necessarily to the way that we want them to be responsive to Billy Donovan, but we got to call it how we see it. He got Josh Giddey to turn his things around. He got Kobe White to this level where he's at. I don't necessarily think it's all on Billy Donovan. I think that Peter Patton had much to do with those type of turnarounds, and they let him walk out the door. And it's going to be interesting to see where they pivot from there. Where do they pivot from there with the next developmental coach? Because I still think they need to have some type of guy in here who can go ahead and coach the hell out of these young players to make sure that they are continuously improving. You've seen good signs out of these players, but you need to take steps forward. All I'm asking is consistent play from my young guys. Josh Giddey, I understand you started the season off a little shaky and you turned it around in the second half. I need a consistent season out of you. Kobe White, 2 years ago, you started the season off hot. Teams adjust to you. You kind of had a drop off. You started this season a little shaky and you turned it right back on. Got yourself Eastern Conference Player of the Month. I need to see consistency. Dalen Terry, you look like an NBA basketball player. I need to see consistency. That's all I'm asking for, is consistent play from my young guys, and we'll see where the chips may fall. But I don't necessarily think that trading for, I honestly think that if they make it known in New Orleans that they want to move off Zion, the Bulls going to be one of the first teams calling. Because I ain't going to lie to you. I've said it yesterday. I'm going to say it again. It will be intriguing to see Zion Williamson and Montes Buzelis on the floor at the same time. It absolutely will be very, very intriguing to see Zion Williamson and Montes Buzelis on the floor at the same time with Josh Giddey being able to throw lobs up, to be able to feed him in the post. And it ain't that many people that can slow Zion Williamson down. I'm just going to call it how we see it. Now, like I said, I will have my concerns, but I absolutely believe that the Chicago Bulls will entertain that, but it will come with a cost. It's just a matter of how much cost. If we getting this, do we got to pay full price, or are we getting a discount? Because to a point that me and CDubb was talking about, hey, it could very well be some type of discussion to where it's like, hey, Zion Williamson, we got injury concerns with him. You have injury concerns with him. We not giving you Kobe White. We'll give you Patrick Williams and Nikola Vucevic. That's something that may be discussed. You know what I'm saying? But again, my position is, if I'm Joe Dumars, we ain't talking unless Kobe White is up for the grabs. But to CDubb's point, when we talked offline, the Bulls have their concerns with players. The Pelicans have their concerns with players. So we'll see how those negotiations go if they ever happen. If they ever happen. I just want to make that clear. This is not anything for certain. It's just for the sake of discussion, because we don't know if this thing is actually going to be true in a couple months when the offseason is officially underway. So we'll see what happens with that. We'll see how the Chicago Bulls are going to move, but it's definitely an interesting thing to see. And I don't think that the Chicago Bulls trading for a young star will derail their plans. There will be some people that push back and say we should have been tanking and we're just going to be stuck in the mud. But the Chicago Bulls let us know their plans already. They are not tanking. They want to compete. Whether they are stuck in the middle, that's where they're fine with being. And it's either we going to get with it or we going to move on to another team. And I ain't moving on to another team. So it is what it is. I'll be right here complaining or cheering them on. Regardless, we just going to be delusional Bulls fans at the end of the day. But that is it for me today, ladies and gentlemen. Thank y'all so much for tuning in to another episode of Shy Bulls Podcast. Before y'all get up out of here, please leave a comment, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell as well. The voicemail bag is open, and you can call in, state your name, and leave your take for us so you can go ahead and be a part of the next episode. The number to do so is 773-242-9219. I appreciate y'all. Make sure you always see red, and y'all already know I'm going to catch y'all on the next one for sure.
Cognac. Gang.